Welcome, everyone, to the Gentleman Project podcast. Today we have Thomas Blackwell with us.
Thomas was referred to us by Rob Schallenberger, who, if any of you listened to the podcast a couple weeks ago, Rob delivered a great performance, lots of awesome tidbits and things that we can work on as fathers. I'm going to go ahead and read a small bio on Thomas so that you know who you're listening to today. Thomas has been an international speaker, best-selling author, and a peak performing coach for over 15 years. He's stood in front of thousands and thousands of people. He's given 1,000 talks and presentations to corporations, executives, entrepreneurs, sales teams, religious groups, and students. He's got a new book out called The Liberty of Our Language Revealed. We bring about what we talk about. He has inspired people around the world to change their language in order to change their results. He's spoken in 12 different countries, 5 continents, and thousands of professionals. One of the things he says is his greatest accomplishments is his 4 precious girls. He's married to his high school sweetheart. We want to welcome Thomas Blackwell to the podcast this morning.
Thank you, gentlemen. Excited to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. I love what you're doing. I love the movement, and it takes courage to do stuff like this. And so it's an honor to be here and contribute in some way. So thank you.
Thanks for being with us, Thomas. So Kirk just gave a bit of a professional background. Maybe tell us a little bit about your personal background, a little bit about your family, just so the listeners, you're sitting in Atlanta right now, right?
Yeah.
And is that where you're originally from, or are you from somewhere else?
Yeah, great question. So I'm originally from Arizona. Lived there 31 years, and we decided about 11, 12 years ago to go to the East Coast. I had some opportunities to open some businesses and things out there, and expanding my speaking career. So we took that. 4 years ago, we decided to go on a family adventure. We decided to pack up all our things in storage. So we sold most of them. And we planned on 1 year to cruise the country, live in vacation homes across the United States and Canada, and see major national parks, see other sites of interest. And we did that for a year. After that year came, we thought we were going to live somewhere in South Carolina. We arrived there, and it was just a clear no. So we thought, what do we do next? And I remember the moment because we were sitting in front of a grocery store, it was a Whole Foods in front, not knowing what we were going to do next. And we just prayed, and we prayed ourselves along to the next spot, literally for another 3 years, 3 months. So it's been 4 years, 3 months of doing this. We're in home number 81 right now. And so I'm in a vacation home.
Wow.
In
my word,
Atlanta. And that's what we do. We live on the road. And in my profession, as long as I'm by an airport, I'm good because I can just fly somewhere and speak. So we've always homeschooled our girls. We have 4 daughters, and it's been absolutely wonderful. I grew up in a small town in Arizona, and it's interesting about, fatherhood and things like that, because, when I was age 6, my dad came in with some clothes over his shoulder, and Mom said, it's time for Dad to go. Now, this wasn't an unusual thing, gentlemen. My dad had gone on business trips and things like that, but something was different about this, and I didn't realize my parents were getting a divorce. And so while that's not unique to me of having parents that get divorced, is something, it shaped me. I remember being very sad and not understanding that, why 2 people that loved each other would separate. I remember during that first year, them being separated, we were with them. And my dad woke me up in the middle of the night and took me to a dingy couch. He was living in a dingy apartment, and we said a prayer. And he said, son, I don't remember what was said in the prayer, but I do remember how I felt, and that he gave me a hug afterwards. And he said, son, always remember to pray. That stuck with me. And I prayed hard because shortly thereafter, he contracted a brain tumor and was passed away within 3 or 4 months after that. So that shaped my childhood, to different things. So you say how I grew up, it's a different perspective that some can relate to having a dad throughout their lives there for them. And some had to rely on other dads per se. And so but for me, it was this, I took it initially as a crutch, as a disclaimer. I would go to friends' houses and say, oh, you got a dad, I don't have a dad. And so it's sort of like a crutch, like it allowed me, it gave me permission to or an excuse even to do things and act out and be a rebel and this and that. And I used it for a while. Oh yeah, but you have a dad. There was one point that all changed and shifted. And I know I could go on and on about, but there was one point that all shifted when that crutch no longer became a crutch. And maybe I can just share that real quick.
Yeah, go ahead. I'd love to hear this. I have so many questions.
Yeah, I have 1,000 questions right now. Just keep going though.
But what you're saying, I'm very interested in this. So go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So I got to the 5th grade, and my mom had just met this guy, and they were getting married. And so it was tough on me too. It was like, who's this new guy? I have new brothers and sisters, and people can relate to this. And it's like, welcome, here's your new brothers and sisters. All of a sudden you meet your new family. And so that was a bigger crutch. It's like my teachers knew this. So I would act out in class. I remember being in the 5th grade when that all shifted. And I'm so grateful for this teacher. Her name was Mrs. Bryant. I would do things in class. I organized pencil bands in the middle of class. People would be tapping their pencils, and I was the leader and behind the teacher's back and stuff. And when we'd have substitute teachers, I'd organize everyone at a certain time of the clock would fall out of their chairs. I mean, who thinks of this stuff? It was brilliant, So but there was one point I just thought nothing could go. And I had this crutch, this disclaimer, because my dad died and this and that, nothing could stop me. Well, there was a young man that sat next to me, he was my same age, a fellow student who sat right in front of me. His name was Brian too. And he, how the desks are pretty close. He sat there and he would comb his hair forward really good and just plaster that thing down with magic cream or something. But the back of his head had this calic and it was like a peacock. It just straight high. It's like, man, did you forget to mat that other stuff down? Because it was right there, and he was right in front of me, and I had to deal with this every day. I had to deal with this hair going up every day. And so one day I decided to do Brian a favor. I got my scissors, they're probably little Crayola scissors, and I just took it upon myself to snip that hair right off. And I just went, cut. Well, it shocked him. He grabbed the back of his head and said, wow, did you just cut my hair? And he said it loud enough. Shh, be quiet, And I was in my mind, I'm thinking, you're welcome, right? But he said, Mrs. Bryant caught wind of it and came over and said, what's going on? And Brian said, Thomas cut my hair. Did you cut his hair? And there's hair all over the ground. What am I going to say? No, Yeah, and it's because it was up. And where are we going to go with that? She said, you are not allowed to cut anyone's hair. Well, she did the worst punishment I could have had. She made me stay in from recess at lunchtime. And what was worse, it was just me and her. You know what I mean? But I thought I was good. I had this disclaimer, this crutch. She understood. My mom's getting remarried. I'm having these new siblings. My dad died. I mean, she was going to feel bad for me. So I'm in there. And here's what she says to me. She says, Thomas, do you feel like the whole world's against you right now? Do you kind of feel like that? And I played into it real good. I said, yeah, Dad died and everything like that. And I thought she was going to give me some sympathy. And she said, good. I'm glad you feel that way. Because you're better than that. And you're not living up to your potential. Excuse me? Are you allowed to say that? She called me out on this disclaimer. And she just stuck it to me. And I said, you know what? You're right. And from that point on, I was done with disclaimers. I was done with crutches. I was done giving power to other things and not live to my full potential. I mean, I became a polar opposite, like the teacher student. And so for me, I'm so grateful to little stories like that and people like that in my life that maybe my dad wasn't there to get me, but Mrs. Bryant was there to get me on track. So I wasn't planning on telling that story, but there it is.
That's a great story. Now, I'm guessing that you have told your girls that story more than once. And that's one way that you teach them, right? That they have control of their own destiny and they can act however they want to act, regardless of what life throws at them. Tell us about how you teach your kids that lesson. Yeah,
you're right. I do teach through stories, and they that's one of our things is we like to sit around and tell stories to each other. But it's my life work too, is I tell stories all over the world. That's what I do for a living. I mean, my book, is one big story. And so conglomerated of a bunch of little stories. So it's the way I teach. I feel like that way. Just the other day, our home before here was on the beach in North Carolina, out there. And that's right. Just last week we lived there on the beach and lived there for a few months. And my daughters and I and wife, we love to run on the beach and walk on the beach. And I love the runs, but I love the after conversation too. And it was just my oldest daughter, Michaela, she's 19. And it was just her and I said, did I ever tell you about the time when I changed my music? And I was in the 7th grade. And it was shortly thereafter when I decided, to live up to my true potential after Mrs. Bryant. She said, "No, Dad, you haven't told me that." I said, "Oh, goodness, well, I need to tell you." Basically, when I was in 7th grade, I started hanging around groups of people that didn't have the exact values that I felt should be in line with me. And I started listening to music that the lyrics and the things they suggested in that music was something I thought I'd never do, but just like it's a good beat and you can listen to it. And for some reason, it made it okay. Well, that all changed dramatically. And I was telling my daughter this story. I said, I went on one of my first campouts as a Boy Scout, and I had all my music, and everybody knew I loved my music. I had a Walkman, and everybody should know what that is, but no, it's a little tape player that you had to tote around, and you had your tapes. Do you remember this? And my tapes were in order, and I had this huge fanny pack that I'd wear around with my Walkman and my tapes, and I was a DJ on wheels, you know what I mean? And so I went to this camp out, and I have all my music, and everybody knows that I'm plugged into my music, and I'm plugged out of life, and it's the music that probably isn't real great. And we got there evening, go to a camp out in the woods there in northern Arizona, and we start to play Capture the Flag. Well, I stole the flag, and I'm running there. It's getting dark, and what separated the two was a pretty large 15-foot-ish cliff with a bunch of rocks and things like that. So to get across it, you're going to have to mosey your way around. And I ended up getting there, and with the adrenaline and everything, I just jump off this cliff. And I get down, I make it, boom. But as I did it, I snapped my foot in 2 places. And so, but we won. I know you're wondering that. We won, so everything's good. But here's the thing. We get to this small town hospital, but we'd forgotten to give this medical waiver sign off from our parents that says, if my kid jumps off a cliff, you can treat him, And so they couldn't treat me with medicine or make the pain go away. And they couldn't, this was before cell phones, so they couldn't get a hold of my parents. And so I'm in this little hospital. All the scouts are on the outside. It's a brick building. And all of a sudden they come in and decide to reset my leg with no anesthesia, no painkillers, nothing. I mean,
oh boy.
So I'm laying there. One scout leader comes and holds my hand on this side, and I'm in the bed, right? And another scout leader comes and holds my hand. We'd never held hands before, but we decided to hold hands at that time. And the doctor comes at the foot of the bed and wraps this curtain around us. And I just thought, this is it. This is how I go, right? We're done. This is this feeling, what's happening? And they just squeeze my hand, and the doctor starts yanking on my foot, snapping it in place, no painkiller, no nothing. And he's setting my leg right there.
Oh,
I may have cried, maybe. There was no relief for me, gentlemen. No relief. And I was searching for relief. And my leaders got this bright idea. They said, "Hey, your music. Do you want your music?" I thought, my music? That brings me zero relief. And I wanted something bigger. I wanted God. I wanted peace. I wanted something else. And I said, I don't even like that music. In fact, throw that music away. Throw what? Are you serious? Yes, throw the music away. I don't want it. I don't want to see it. I don't even like it. It brings me no peace. And they did, and I've never seen that music again. And it's amazing what happened because, excuse me, the moment I threw away that music, my friends changed. And I started hanging out with friends that listened to music that was uplifting, to where peace and joy and goodness could be felt at the same time. In fact, I got into a boy band, literally. Like we got together and we got into a boy band. We made CDs and we earned enough money to put all 6 of us on our missions. And like, it just changed my course. Like literally music changed my world. And later in life, I say to God, hey, you could have just told me change your music and things. I could have done it, and not had to break my leg or whatever. But obviously that had to happen. But I'm so grateful for these experiences that literally they shape us. And so if we find ourselves saying, hey, take away my challenges, take away my trials, you be careful. You'll get out of shape real fast, So everything that's happening right now is happening for us. So that's just something I told my daughter the other day on the beach. She said, Dad, I never knew that story. And you should tell that one more often. And so I said, okay, I will. So here I am. I'm telling you, my daughter said to tell it. So
that's a great story. And it's one that I'm going to have my kids listen to for sure. You had a, because of the trial, because of the pain, you had an aha moment for sure. That's a cool story.
So Thomas, you obviously teach by telling stories. Stories have a powerful impact because we're able to remember them. We can identify with them. I was thinking the same thing as Cory. That's a great lesson for my teens to listen to that story. They're gonna hear that one. And I had to chuckle several times because I've been a scoutmaster several times, and I've had some fun experiences in that world. But you teach by stories, but it's also the language that you use. I've been very anxious to talk to you about the studies that you've done and the things that you've written about in your book as it relates to fatherhood, because I have noticed that slight changes in my language as I speak to my children can make a big impact on the way they respond. How do we be more cognizant of the language that we use to, one, make sure that it's not harmful towards our children, and two, to make sure that it builds our children up and gets us the response that we want when we speak to them?
Here's the tagline for my studies on my book is called, we bring about what we talk about. And when someone understands and is conscious truly that we bring about everything that we say, there's a physical power of our words. There's a chapter on that, but going back to biblical terms, okay, how was this whole earth created? By the word. Everything was created by the word. And then we've been given the chance to create our worlds, our reality, by our words. And on several occasions, it'll say, and by the word, it was done. And so if you talking about the semantics of it first is, we are the captains, and our life, our environment, our results around us are the crew. So whatever the captain says, the crew obeys. So for example, if the captain says, sail towards the promised land, the crew says, aye, aye, captain. And they go to work. There is no filter. There is no disobedience. If the captain says, sink this ship, the crew with no filter says, aye, aye, captain. There is no disobedience. They go and do it. And so if you think about it in that context, when everything we say happens, I wonder how many people often wake up in the morning and sink their own ships by what they say. Quick story is a friend that had a daughter that was trying out for cheerleading, and she knew she'd probably make it. She's a very talented girl. The daughter comes home and says, Mom, I made the cheer squad. And the mom says, hey, that's great, honey, but we can't afford that. And so all those dreams and everything she worked are dashed because the word CANT is a crusher. There's no progression with it. Very simply, I said, now, had you changed that to, I'm so excited for you, and I'm excited to see how we're going to make this happen, because I know it's worth it to you. Then there's progression. Then there's possibility. So those little things, my angel mother installed this type of belief and words into me. She always said I could do anything. Oh, you can do that. Oh, you can do anything you want. And the cans, she turns our cans into cans and our dreams into plans type thing. It's just always the can do. And so with our children, here's the caveat. Only say the things you actually want to happen. And in life, only say the things you actually want to happen. Our physical bodies obey that. You know, people wake up, they go to work on Monday, and they say, oh, nothing good ever happens on Monday. It's going to be a tough week. And I say, aye, aye, Captain. Then other people say, hey, I love Mondays. And great things are always happening on Monday. I'm always meeting great people. It's going to be a powerful week. Aye, aye, Captain. The crew is going to obey regardless. So say the things you actually want to happen. Now, as you read the book and as you study this further and you understand the work behind it, you'll be super conscious. And that's the first step, just being conscious of that. You know, people tend to act how you speak to them. So in our home, we have for one, the CANT word just doesn't happen. It's like a swear word. You just don't hear it in our house. Only cans and possibilities. But then two, when people tend to act how you speak to them, I wonder how we speak to our children if we know that they tend to act how I speak to them. So we have a tradition amongst many, just like many families do, but we pray every day. And one of the, with our family, one person says the prayer all day. For today, it's my youngest daughter, Liberty, May. She's 11. She'll say the prayer all day, including the one at night before we all go to bed. And no matter where I'm at in the world, we always have this tradition. We know exactly on the calendar when Dad's going to call and we're going to say prayer. Phone prayer works too. But at the end of that, what happens is we all then go around and say what we love about the person that said the prayer all day. And that's every day. So tomorrow will be the next daughter, then the next daughter, and then it goes on up the line. So yesterday was my day. Everybody said what they loved about Dad. So do you understand something that we always go to bed with peace in our home? Contention, if it slipped in somehow throughout the day, leaves. Because when you say what you love about someone, it has to leave. And now contention is getting further and further and further away because of how we speak to each other. And that's a sure way, a sure bet that there's going to be love in the home before our heads hit the pillow. So we've done that tradition for over 12 years now. And it happened. It's another story, but it happened. I have 4 daughters. My third daughter's in heaven. But we did that as a result of her coming to this earth. And when she was a baby, we just wanted her to feel how much we loved her. And so I remember the day, excuse me, she's propped up in her car seat there, and we didn't know how long we were going to have her. I thought I was going to have her forever, but we just wanted to let her know. So every day we all went around as a family and said what we loved about Melody. And so she knew, but then when she passed and returned to heaven, I don't say passed anymore. Let's skip that. I say return to heaven. We kept it going, and we've been saying what we love about each other every single night. So anyway, that's some things simple that can be implemented right away. If that's tough for you as a dad or a mom or a family, there's some layers that need to be shed, and it'll get easier as time goes on because it may not be a traditional home of saying what you love. But I will tell you, the power of it is life-changing. Now, what's interesting about this too is I do this with organizations. I will get a room of 15 people in an organization in a department, and I'll put one person in the center and I'll say what you love and appreciate about that person. It's amazing, the bond, the trust, the tears, the things that are released, forgiven, had happened immediately because they just never knew how you felt about them. And we make this a consistent practice because people just need to know how you feel about them. I believe it's a big reason why relationships and things leave, or key employees, whatever you want to call it in that context, leave because they don't know, they don't feel recognized, right? But inside of that, the power of this, I just have to tell you, my brother-in-law, he has 8 siblings. He's the oldest, and their parents were celebrating they were celebrating their dad's 60th birthday, I believe it was. And he said, hey guys, he goes to his 8 siblings. Well, we're going to sit around in a circle and we're going to say what we love about Dad. They are you serious? Are you crazy? You know, and they said, no, that's what we're going to do. They had never done this. He was turning 60. And they sat around each one and took as long as it did. And the dad, he lost it. Well, he gained some tears. Let's not say he lost. He gained some tears. And he said, kids, I want you to know that was the best thing I have ever received in my whole life.
What a great story.
Yeah, I love that. My parents have done that. They always will do a birthday dinner for us. And the tradition is that we go around the table and we say what we love about that person. You're only limited to one thing, so that the person at the end of the table still gets a chance to say something that they feel.
Yeah.
But it's a great tradition that, you kind of look forward to it when it's your birthday. And you look forward to saying nice things to other people on their birthday. And you bring up a really good point that why do we wait until their birthday to tell them?
Yeah.
I love the fact that you guys do that to the person in your family that says the prayer that day. That's a great habit to get into. I love that idea, and I think we might have to implement that at our house.
You can't shake it from us now, Kirk. I mean, man, you don't think I look forward to my turn? Like all day long, I look forward.
Most of the time in my house, it's not my turn; it's his turn, and I think that might change who wants to say the prayer.
You see,
the dinner table.
There you go. Change your language, change your results, man.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I want to know a little bit more about this nomadic lifestyle that you guys lead as a family, because I'm sure that's changed the culture that you guys have and the dynamics in your family by homeschooling, living in new places, making new friends, being friends to each other. Because when you show up to a place and you don't stay there for very long, you don't make friends very long, right? How have you overcome some of those challenges with your daughters as you've traveled?
I would add to that, Thomas. Why did you start doing this in the first place? I'd love to know that. And, where did this even come from?
Okay, so I'll answer both. And so I'll challenge a little bit the language here now that we're talking about with Kirk, because it is actually super easy. We make friends so fast. Anywhere we go, we go to the church, the local church where we pertain to there. We show up and we have friends across the country in Canada, literally. I mean, I could call upon people, and it's so cool how fast people gravitate. And we have, our Christmas card list is huge now. And so I love that we have people across the country we can call on. I will tell you that our girls are each other's best friends. And Kimberly and my wife and I have always wanted that. Growing up, I think I sought outside of the home often for friends in the public sector. But now that everything's contained, we rely on each other so much, and they're each other's best friends. And that's exactly what we wanted. So we've created that by design. And we also are very particular. We're very separate from the world. And let me just say in what senses we can be. I have a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, and an 11-year-old. They don't have cell phones. We have a family cell phone in case they go somewhere they can call or text us. They don't have social media accounts. They don't have their own phone number. They don't. They don't. They use the internet for homeschooling functions, but they don't know what's going. We don't watch TV in our house. Literally, we just. So none of those things. We keep this tight ship. Very tight and control everything that happens. There's a poem I came across years ago, and I put it to memory. It goes like this. He says, all the water in the world, the highest wave or tide, can never sink the smallest ship unless it gets inside. And all the evil in the world, the blackest kind of sin, can never hurt you in the least unless you let it in. And so we keep our home and our family tight, and we're very conscious of what comes in. So what caused us to go on this family adventure? We planned on 1 year, Cory, to allude to your question. And we thought of years, with what I do, I can be mobile. I work out of the houses. I finished this book, on the road. we knew we could be mobile. And so we said, why not? Why not sell anything and just go and live in these vacation homes? Because look, in vacation homes, this wasn't always the situation, but now the industry with VRBOs and Airbnbs, they're everywhere in the world. I could find a house. It's amazing that it's allowed us to do this. So with that, it's real deep. We drew out of a jar. We drew sticks out of a jar, and it was either buy a home, move to a different city, rent a home, and something else, or one of them was go on a family adventure. There was these 4 sticks, and we prayed over those sticks, like casting lots type thing. We said, Heavenly Father, we're going to do what you tell us to do. And we drew this stick out and it said, go on a family adventure. So we're like, okay, what does that mean? And honestly, had we known all the things that we were going to go through, we would never change it, but it might've been discouraging because we have found so many things about ourselves, that material things, there's so many things you don't need really, but it's been, the Lord has shaped us over the last 4 years, and is truly shaped, has let us set aside so many things that were just not progressing to us. And we've become so close and relied on God tremendously. I mean, I am 100% serious when we say we'll get in the car oftentimes because we don't know where the next place is, and we'll just pray as a family and say, where are we supposed to go? And then we'll find out later when we go to a place, say, oh, help us understand. And there'll be somebody we'll meet. There'll be a family we'll meet, friends that we'll all of a sudden come in contact with. And they'll say, literally, how did you know to come here? And we've had several of those experiences, and they're very spiritual and dear to us. And so we say the first year was ours. We planned out the whole first year. I mean, national parks, church sites, we had everything. And then that next year, the next 3 years really has been the Lord's years. He's just used us to where he wants us to be. So we're kind of like vessels blowing in his wind. That's how we see it. And so I'm not sure when it's going to end, gentlemen.
How's I'm curious to know how your 19-year-old is kind of taking the move from adolescence to adulthood, and is she transitioning to go away to college or anything like that?
Yeah, we didn't tell her that you had to make a transition. We sort of kept that from her. No, that's funny. It's the number one question she gets, hey, okay, now that you're 18, 19, what are you doing? And I said, Michaela, you can go anywhere you want. You know what I mean? We'll take care of the college. You say, you can really, what's your aspiration? The way we parent is we don't say, here's what we haven't planned for you. Here's our thoughts. We turn them to the Lord, and say, pray about it. And whatever you feel, because she's super talented, she could go and do whatever she wants. But she prayed about it and she said, Mom, Dad, I want to do home college. I want to do just online. And why would I leave now? I've had this, and that was her answer. And we feel great about it. So she's at home. She does online college. And interesting enough, when she decided that, the whole pandemic thing happened. And kids that were perhaps going to a public sector or university now were consigned to home in many cases, So anyway, that's where we're at now. But we pray ourselves along, and we know we're led along that way, and that we've lived our lives. We parent that way. We don't budge unless we know that we have some sort of confirmation from it.
So Thomas, you've been feeding us with fantastic stuff here. I want to ask you, what are some of the tough things you've gone through as a parent, and how did you overcome them? You've given your kids this great sense of a core of values, of this idea that they can do anything, this core of faith, which is fantastic. What have been some of the bumps in the road, and how have you overcome those?
There's several opportunities for growth that we've had in our lives. The one that I can think back to immediately is my third daughter returning to heaven. When you get married, you don't think you're going to have that. You think that happens to other people. And I know I'm not certainly unique as a parent of losing a child, but you get in this club, I guess. And so anybody that I know has lost a child, I owe them a hug type thing. And when we found out Melody had a heart condition, like your prayer, everything amplifies. your consciousness, how you parent, how you love your kids, how you live each day, because you just want this miracle that she's going to be okay. And I just, her pulmonary valve was completely shut. And so the oxygen from her heart to her lungs, once she came out, when she was born, she was going to have zero oxygen to her heart, which a person just cannot function that way. But in the womb, she's okay. And so she was live there. But look, I knew that we could pray and the Lord could open a valve. And so we decided to have her at home because the hospital said, we can't do anything for you. The surgeries were just too risky and didn't have a high percentage of success. And so they were going to give us what's called a comfort birth. And a comfort birth is where basically they make everybody comfortable and you watch your child pass away. And I wasn't okay with that. So we said, well, we'll be comfortable at home and I'll deliver her. And we got a midwife. And so we brought her home and she was born. And when she came, she, in fact, was not breathing. And we said some prayers and asked for blessings and things like that you're probably familiar with. And she came back to life. And it was amazing that way, to see someone go from purple to pink again. And you're making these promises to God, like, I'm yours. Like, take me, y'all are stirring it up this morning. It's not me. It's your questions. So there we went, and everybody, I thought, hey, but she's here. We got her. He healed her and everything. So life went on and it was just precious. And she, after 13 precious days, it was time for her to go. I remember the day we were, I wrote a little song on the piano and Kimberly was holding her. She said, Thomas, she's leaving. And I went over to her and just said a prayer with her. And something was different. Like and my wife said, hey, you can decide. You can decide if you want to stay or not, to Melody. And she decided to go. So she returned to heaven at that time. You have that point of how are you going to respond to this situation? And we really could have taken, and there's a whole deeper story behind that of all the miracles that happened that night. And they, trust me, they were miraculous what happened that night. But at the end, one of the hardest things I did see, that I had about 2:30 in the morning, this medical examiner's at my house, and I have to give my daughter to the medical examiner. Like, that's it. Like, she can't, the body can't stay in our home. I was about 3 feet away from him, and it's like my arms were locked. I just couldn't do it. And he just stood there, and everybody was very reverent and kind. And finally, some words that he said to me, like he was like a fellow brother. And he said, hey, you can give her to me. I'm a fellow brother. And it's like, and unlocked my arms and boom. It's like, that was it. And then everybody was gone. And my wife and I, it was this pointed decision really of how we're going to respond to this situation. And we could have gone two different ways. I'm grateful for the courage to go out the way we did, because we could have gone, and I'm going to apply it to words here, but we could have said two words that could have been destructive, like crushing. Then the two words are, why me? When we say why me, it's this victim blaming mentality that has zero progression. There's no openness. And a lot of people say, why me? Why did this pandemic happen? Why did this happen? But we didn't. We changed the two words to four words, and we changed it to, what can I learn? And when you change it to what can I learn, it's like opportunity and progression, ability to see the big picture is open. You become powerful instead of powerless. And all of a sudden we could see, and over time it's manifested itself over and over again. We learned a lot of things from that. I think God trusted us just like he trusts us with all our experiences. But that, let me tell you, that was a tough thing at that time. But we're so much better because of it. So, and I'm grateful for it. I can honestly say I'm grateful for it.
Well, thanks for sharing something so personal and special to your family. That means a lot to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't think of anything more difficult in my life than what you have gone through. But I can see the impact that it's had on you. Just watching you talk about her, you just light up. Mm-hmm. And you can tell that there's a lot of love there.
Yeah. Now, someone once said that, I think about this now. Someone said, it made a lot of sense to me now. They said the best way to have a piece of heaven in your home is to have someone in your home in heaven. And that makes a lot more sense to me now. So,
yeah. Well, Thomas, your stories, I think I could sit and listen to them for hours. They're great. I love the way you deliver them. I love the language that you use and the positivity. I'm checking myself as I speak. And I hope that continues as I go home to my kids, and that I check myself and make sure that the language that I'm using is positive, progression-based language to help them to move along. One of the things and one of the most impactful conversations that I've had at my home is when my boys asked what it means to be a gentleman. And that's the impetus behind the Gentleman Project. Mm-hmm. And so we ask all of our guests before the end of the episode, what do they think that it means to be a gentleman?
Thank you for asking that question. Before I go into that, I would just say, there's a whole movement on language of integrity. And so I'm excited for you, Kirk, to be conscious of that. And so don't just hope to go home and do it. Just go home and do it. And that's chapter number 12, language of integrity. There's no try, there's no hope, there's no power in those words. Like, do what you're going to do. And so if you're going to go home and be conscious, I'm going to go home and be conscious of my language now. That's done, type thing. But the crew gets confused when the captain says to the crew, I hope to do this or try that. Literally the crew's like, we're not sure what you meant. There's no, sail towards the promised land, or maybe let's think about sailing towards the promised land. I think I'm going to try to sail towards, what if our captain goes, hey, let's think about trying to maybe get to the promised land today, everybody. Or you're in the construction world, say, hey, we're going to think about maybe trying to build this house today. He says, we're building the house. Let's go. So, what does a gentleman mean to me? Well, in my personal vision, as a father, it is, I am the gentleman, an example to my daughters that they can look to. And so for example, a simple thing, when we're in our vehicle and our car's name is Goldie, all our stuff has names, and we show up to a place, nobody gets out of Goldie. It's an SUV. Everybody stays put. I get out and I go back to the first door and I open up the first door, and Charity gets out of that one, and Mel and Liberty. Then I go around to the other side of the door. I open up, Michaela gets out, and I go over and I open up, Kimberly gets out of the door. Nobody moves. And so we've trained them well to know this is what men do for you. They all stop at doors. They all expect these gentlemanly behavior type thing. And I do this, and it's who we are. But I will tell you this, that my daughters, I get emotional even thinking about it, will know when a gentleman shows up in their world because of their father.
Thomas, thank you for being with us today. I think I could spend hours with you, and I hope someday that I get the chance to. Thank you for joining us on the Gentleman Project podcast. Join us next week. I'm Kirk Chugg.
I'm Cory Moore.
Have a great day.